Good day. We're gonna tackle about the perception of world Englishes by Jessica Baker. Introduction. This study looks at how native speakers of English respond to different world Englishes compared to non-native English speakers. Also, it looks at whether people who have more experiences with travel or languages have more positive attitudes towards world English speakers and if they were able to know where a speaker is from. 4 native and 4 non-native participants, 8 in total who were composition 1 students, were interviewed. 4 recordings of various world Englishes were used and participants were asked about their attitudes towards the Englishes. This study found native and non-native participants do not have different attitudes towards world Englishes. It also found that experience did not affect attitudes or abilities identifying world English speakers.
This study have 2 objectives. One is to explore whether or not people have particular prejudices against different English varieties. 2 is to focus on diversifying the people who are studied as well as the world English.
Methodology. The purpose of this study is to look at the possible factors that influence people's attitudes towards speakers from inner, outer, and expanding world Englishes. The specific languages used are American, British, Ghanaian, and Russian English. In detail, this particular study explores if backgrounds, cultures, and personal beliefs shape attitudes towards various Englishes in the speakers of such English varieties.
Research context. This study was performed at the University of Toledo using freshman students who were in English Composition 1 courses for either native and international students. The English composition courses are divided into native and international sections. Initially, participants were contacted by speaking with all composition instructors by asking for their permission to use their students. Research questions. This study seeks to answer the following research question. 1. How do native speakers of English respond to different varieties world Englishes compared to the non-native English speakers? 2. Do people who have more experience with traveling, language, or people of various ethnicities have more positive attitudes towards people who speak a variety of world Englishes? Are they more likely to know from where a world English speaker comes?
Participants. In total, 8 participants, 4 males and 4 females consented to be a part of the study. As previously stated, participants were chosen from both native and international English Composition 1 courses at the University of Toledo. All participants were in their first semester of college and were taking their first university composition course. All of the native English speakers were from the Midwest of the United States, while the non-native English speakers came from South Korea, Saudi Arabia, Sri Lanka, and India. Pseudonyms have been used when referring to the participants to ensure anonymity. In the section below, the researcher provided relevant details about the participants. 4 of the participants were native speakers of English, and the other 4 participants were non-native English speakers. Data collection. Data from the study was gathered by means of interviews utilizing 25 questions. The questions were created and expanded upon a previous study the researcher conducted 3 years prior during her undergraduate studies. The question addressed an assortment of topics about the possible influences and attitudes towards other varieties of Englishes and were separated into 5 distinct categories.
Results for question number 1. How do native speakers of English respond to different varieties of world Englishes compared to the non-native English speakers? Through this research, the researcher found that there was no clear difference in responses from the native speakers and non-native speakers of the different varieties of world Englishes. In fact, there were more similarities in responses between the 2 groups than there was differences.
The results in question number 2, do people who have more experience with traveling, languages, or people of various ethnicities have more positive attitudes towards people who speak a variety of world English? Are they more likely to know from where a world English speaker comes? To understand participant experiences, the researcher analyzed the responses from the background information, questions, and responses from the participant world English experiences. Jenna had the most experience considering she had traveled to 2 other countries, which are Austria and Germany. Matt was the least experienced native, having never traveled outside of the US. Dilip had the most of the non-native participants. He had traveled to 4 countries, which are Singapore, Malaysia, India, and the US. Finally, Nita was the least experienced non-native, having only traveled to the US Though each participants had varying experiences, they all responded to the World English in similar way. When listening to the audio recordings, participants had to choose the highest education the speaker had received as well as the length of time the World English speaker spoke in English. Each participant had stated the American speaker had the highest level of education and have been speaking English the longest. All the participants had also stated that the Ghanaian speaker had the lowest level of education and had been speaking English for the shortest amount of time. In regards to the second half of the question, are they more likely to know where a speaker comes? It did not yield clear results. Of both the native and non-native participants, Jenna, who had the most experience of the native participants, was the only one to properly state where each speaker was from. Dilip, who had more experience than both the native and non-native participants, was the only participant who incorrectly stated where each speaker was from. All of the speakers, the American English speaker was recognized the most, with only Dilip incorrectly stating where the speaker was from.
Discussion of the study. From the responses during the interviews with participants, clear themes arose. The specific themes were understandability, clarity, accent favoring, life experiences, familiarity, world English ability, and nonverbal cause. Each theme will be discussed individually. The results from this research and data show positive attitudes towards inner cycle varieties of world English, or varieties that are more commonly experienced by participants. All of the participants within this study were living and studying in the United States, which makes it clear why the participants had positive attitudes towards American English. If the participants had more exposure to other world English varieties, especially outer and expanding circle varieties, then there would be a greater probability of participants having more positive attitudes toward those varieties. The result of this research assists the study of world Englishes and the field of social linguistics in giving a deeper understanding of perception due to people, life experiences, and the perception of native English speakers compared to non-native English speakers towards world Englishes.
The conclusion of the study. It is evident from these findings that native and non-native English speakers do not respond to world Englishes differently. In fact, much of their responses are similar. Also, people's experiences with different varieties of world English does affect their attitudes, whether it is in a positive or negative way. Having more experience with world English allows for people to have more positive attitudes, but as people become familiar with world English, they can also grow bored and uninterested with the variety. This is present in both native and non-native English speakers. Even if a person has experience with world English variety, this does not mean that he or she will always be able to recognize the variety, especially when identifying it from other varieties. Finally, even if people want to not show bias or their true perceptions towards world English or a speaker of world English, their true feelings will still be. Recommendation of the study. Future research can expand on this topic in many ways. The researchers have found that much of the previous research done only focused on native or non-native participants, not on both. The study focused on both native and non-native participants but was only a small sample. A larger sample of both native and non-native participants could yield clearer results of attitudes towards world English. To also get a larger sample, it would be beneficial to find participants who are not students or studying at a university, but rather find participants who are working in the real world. By doing this, it could also consist in finding other factors that influence attitudes towards world English. Finally, future research could utilize more world English varieties, especially from outer and expanding circle countries. The field of world English would benefit from focusing less on people's perceptions on inner circle world English varieties and more on varieties that are not commonly experienced.